There's a lot of attention on what divides people right now, but we want to focus on how to find common ground. So we are sharing strategies today to navigate healthy controversy. Family researcher and BYU instructor Heather Johnson is here to help us navigate those situations when you don't see eye to eye with your spouse or your kids or your neighbor or
social media.
Yeah, the list could go on and on. And I feel like in Utah, maybe this is just an anecdotal that's coming to mind, but it seems like we live in neighborhoods where we oftentimes go to church with the same people and school with the same people. And how do we keep that divide? If we disagree with someone, how do we keep that divide from widening?
Sure, especially when, like you said, we are around the same people a lot. And so we don't want that to hurt the relationships that we're also trying to maintain and build. So one of the very first things we have to do to not let the divide take over is we have to change our focus. This is what I mean by that. Oftentimes when there's controversy or things we disagree about, and remember, disagreements are normal. They are a part of marriage, they're a part of raising kids, they're a part of neighborhoods and social media. When we have those disagreements, we tend to work really hard to be understood, and we have to change that. Our main focus, if we want to close this divide, is to seek more to understand someone else, right? We've got that Covey saying running through our head.
Yeah.
We have to seek first to understand someone else's approach and someone else's opinion. The problem with this is usually when we listen to people, we're listening so that we can reply, right? We're already conjugating. What are we going to say? What experiences do we have? How are we going to defend ourselves?
How are we going to change their point of view?
It's exactly right. And instead of listening to reply, we have to genuinely listen to understand. Once we start to do that, that divide will close, because the more they feel understood, the more they'll trust, which means they too will be on board with us. So once we start to do this, we're going to then start to validate instead of defend. And I know you've probably been in those same situations. I find myself in them when there is a disagreement, someone immediately, or I immediately want to defend my point of view and defend my belief and my stance. But the truth is, we need to instead be looking for ways to validate the people we're listening to. There's even words: acknowledging, accepting, I apologize that we feel different about this, right? Those are words that we can use to help them understand that we're working really hard to get them to put ourselves in their position and hear it. So we want to validate instead of defend. The more we defend, the more we start to blame.
And I think there can kind of be a misconception that if you're validating somebody else's point of view, you're turning your back on your own beliefs.
And it's exactly right. And we're not. Validating their understandings or their beliefs or their opinions is simply just saying, I'm giving all I've got here to get you, to understand you. Give me more. Tell me how I can understand this perspective. The problem with this too is if we're not validated and working to validate, and instead we're justifying and defending and blaming, we start to confuse opinions with facts. And this one's almost comical, right? We've had those conversations where we're talking to someone and we have an opinion, but we are stating it like it is a fact, right? I immediately think with my husband and I, our first couple years of marriage, and we've joked here on Studio 5 before, he thinks dirt bikes are fantastic for families. I don't necessarily, right? We've gone back and forth. And it's funny because those first 5 years, I very much had an opinion, but I delivered it as fact. It was a fact that I felt this way, that they were dangerous, that we shouldn't have them. It wasn't a fact at all. It was purely my opinion. And so we want to separate opinion from fact and make sure that we keep them separate. I have an opinion, but so do the people I speak with. And so my main goal should be to hear their opinion and understand that that is a truth to them, just like dirt bikes being dangerous are a truth to me.
And how do you reckon that? When you have two people and you've acknowledged that, okay, you have that opinion, I have this opinion, then what?
Then we recognize that we can understand and still disagree. And it's okay.
Agree to disagree.
It's exactly right. It's like you said at the beginning, we think that just because our opinions are different and we feel some pushback, that means you're saying mine isn't okay. That's not what we're saying. I can disagree with my husband. I disagree with a lot of people on social media when it comes to politics. That's okay. But I can still understand their perspective. I can still understand that they too are trying to raise a family in a place that they feel safe, with laws that govern them in a way that they feel comfortable. The interesting thing is we usually have the same goals. We just go at them or see them a little bit different.
We see the world differently. Our experiences lend themselves to different points of view as well.
It's exactly right. So we can understand and still disagree, right? When we go back to dirt bikes in our marriage with my husband, I understand his point of view. We have them in our garage right now, and I get that. It doesn't mean that my opinion about them has changed. I don't necessarily see them as, less dangerous, or I want more of them, but I understand, and that's okay. It's the understanding that leads us to know how to act correctly, right? And this action brings us then to a difference between sympathy and empathy. We're so quick to have sympathy, which is pity, right? It's that feeling of, I'm sorry you feel that way. Oh, it's too bad you don't see my perspective.
It almost comes out automatically.
It's exactly right, and this is sympathy. That is not what empathy is. Empathy is a willingness to recognize that the opinions coming at us are that person's truth. We're willing to say, that is what's true to you. That is really what burns inside you and how you see things. And then we're willing to see that perspective and understand it without judgment. That's the difference. That ability to then know it's a truth and let go of the judgment is what separates empathy from sympathy. Sympathy still has some judgment behind it, right? Some pity behind it.
Yeah, and letting go of that judgment. Any tips for how to do that? Because that can sometimes be the most challenging part, is letting go of that judgment.
Sure, to let go of it. The very first thing, and really overwhelming, the most powerful thing, is to see them just like we see ourselves. It takes a lot of character to step back and say, wait a second, you are a person just like me. You are a mom, you have hopes and dreams and cares, you have good days and bad days, and so do I. And as soon as we make them people instead of objects, meaning something that stands in the way of our opinion being shared or being understood, we can see them as a person. And when I see a neighbor or someone on social media, or even my husband, as a real person, and recognize those things just like I recognize them in me, I don't have a need to judge a lot of the time, because I don't want someone to judge me that way. I need someone to have that same empathy for me too. And so we want to be really careful. We let emotions take over, and we let circumstances take over, and we've got to keep those separate, right?
Well, and when our opinions and our beliefs get brought up, that brings up our emotions. So how do we keep those at bay?
Well, again, it's the same thing. It's recognizing that it's more important, or we need to do the right thing despite the emotion that we're feeling or the circumstances that we're in. There is still a right thing. And the right thing we still have an obligation to hear and see it more than we're working to get our point understood. There's a difference there.
So much to think about as we're battling this in our homes, at our schools, on Facebook, on social media.
Everywhere.
It's really everywhere. I mean, this is just day-to-day interactions for most of us.
It is. It's just those interactions. And it really is recognizing the need to treat other people and the responsibility we have to treat them in the same way that we would hope to be treated. It's almost a step further, though, because it's easy to say, well, I hope they'd be nice. But we have to decide what nice means. And nice really is seeing them like us, with the empathy to seek more to understand and to then attend to whatever it is we've just understood.
And it's not just on the layer. It really is. You've got to get down deep. And it's got to be a genuine feeling.
It does. It has to be genuine. And the thing about that is, oftentimes, and I know this applies to me, I can do the right thing all day. I can behave the right way. But inside, I might not be having the right thoughts or feelings towards the people I disagree or have controversy with. People will respond to the way we feel on the inside about them, not our behavior, right? This is how our children look at us and say, are you irritated, or are you really listening? Well, I can pretend to listen, but they know full well what's going on the inside. So when it comes to this controversy, we have to be willing to actually on the inside make the change, instead of just behaviorally type the right words or say the right things. That's not believable, right? It's what's going on the inside that matters.
And you're switching things up. You have a new practice coming up. Where can people find you?
You can, all the information for me is on Studio 5's website, but I've opened my own practice to really coach marriages,